the Nude Astrologer, and today I am in an episode of the episodes that I'm finally doing. That is what's going to be around 2025, 2026 in the United 2027. Um, and just a bit of a disclaimer, this is the type of the video that I would not watch certain things that I know my colleagues did, and because I don't know if I want to do it, and I realized that I do want to do it, so some of what I might say you might have heard in other places, and that's okay. I just don't watch anything on that topic before I record an episode. So I know the Astrology Podcast did an episode about Uranus return in the chart of the United States, which I'm probably going to watch after recording this video. And if you have not been watching the series of S.J. Anderson and Tom, Tom Dan Waits, I was like, it's not Tom Waits, it's Dan Waits. And Dan Waits of the astrology of the 2020s, then you absolutely should be if you're interested in this type of videos. And so I have not watched their episode on the USA, and then it was like, okay, my own, and then I'm gonna watch. So if I repeat something that you have already heard, it is because I act in this way to be ethical with my content. So without further, I'm looking at for the USA chart for the July 1770 with the ascendant in Sagittarius. Now, some of you may say, is the right ascendant? It's not the right ascendant. Maybe, maybe not. I'm working with aspects here, so I will try to focus on aspects, and we can get an accurate data nonetheless. So the transit that I chose was around 2026 when Uranus is already in Gemini. I like the trine that we have between Pluto and Uranus. On a mundane level, I have talked about that trine, that very interesting aspect between everything that Pluto signifies and Uranus Eurekas. So I will delve into exploring the trine between Uranus and Pluto in other episodes, and you can join me on a Research with Me live episode if you are live. But for now, I just want us to keep in mind that this is happening. However, Mars will be crossing from Leo to Virgo, and this would be Mars in conjuncting Pluto. And same with Jupiter, and Jupiter will be squaring Uranus at this time. And so we're gonna have a series of squaring, Uranus from pole of Leo, Virgo, and probably before that from the pole of Aquarius, Pisces. And we know that we are heading here towards a Uranus return, another Uranus return. We know that there were revolutions around Uranus in the United States, civil wars, revolutions, so on and so forth. So that, that's stating the obvious. That's Uranus return. Okay, that's stating the obvious, and there are, for sure, 3 hours that will see that in much more detail that I will watch when I finish recording. But there is other context. Okay, the context of this return is that we will have Mars, okay, action, war, Action, war. Okay, we got it. We know what Mars is doing. Um, sort of a kind of a conjuncting Jupiter. And to me, when I see Mars Jupiter, I see war on the background of, I see fundamentalism. Now, of course, religion is a gross word. Jupiter also signifies philosophy. Of course, Uranus is ideology. Okay? And the line between ideology and philosophy is very thin. Um, I would say that philosophy is something that you meditate on. Ideology is something that you're active on. Although we are supposed to be acting, we were supposed to be acting for the good instinct or the instinct to do good with Jupiter. But then we have Jupiter, philosophy, religion, beliefs, and Mars acting on those beliefs. The conjunction tells me acting on those beliefs. And Mars will begin here in Leo, so it would be a fiery action, and it turns into Virgo. Um, so it, even though Mars is not the best in Virgo, in Virgo it's about the details. Um, in Leo, it's speaking to the hearts of people or performative acts. Virgo, it can be verbal acts, but definitely there would be action around a belief that is already accentuated, and then the square to an outer planet intensifies that, and then the fact that it is an outer planet that is Uranus adds a flair of revolt. Okay, um, and the fact that Uranus is having a return, of course, something is going to happen. But it is not just that we have a Uranus here. So it's not just that, any luminary eclipse. And notice the eclipse, the nodes are going to be on the axis of Aquarius and Leo, and before that Virgo Pisces. So it's activating the Mars Jupiter thingy here. And it's not just it's going to be okay, Uranus return, then something touches, the moon touches, the sun touches, and then we have a revolution, Mars touches. But now we have Jupiter square. That tells me that it not only it's going to be a time of upheaval, there's going to be a fear of extremism and a flare of revolting around the belief, around the philosophy. I kind of think about the labor, around the world. The 1st of May is the day people wear red because of communists, but what they know is that this is the day where people actually wear blue, because this was a day that signifies the revolt of employees against the hardworking conditions, and this happened in the United States. So it's not the 1st of May, the communist holiday, but employees that actually signify. Interesting colors. Red and blue are both, and of course we associate blue more to Mars, but to Saturn, but blue is something that I always give as a tip to use it with Mars days, because the red is to deflect. We use that for protection. Of course, it's a color of passion, root chakra, and the And the blue is a color of truth. So when we want Mars to be in alignment with truth, we want to use the color blue. And we see that, we see the use of the blue can be an issue for billion of things. Of course, Gemini is around social discord. And yes, the fact that Jupiter and Mars are going to go between the 9th and the 10th also tell me that it's not just a civil war in between two parts of people, like Northern America, Northern USA, and the southern colonies that we had around the foundation of the United States, but also that there can be not only war between the people and themselves, but also a war or revolting against the regime. And I tend to believe that both parties who will fight, whatever parties it will be, around belief, it will be around ideology, but Uranus is always ideology. And it will be extremist, like it's like the extremists of both sides will fight each other, but also the regime itself, whatever regime will be in 2026. I know that 2024, 2025 have some serious eclipses on, I think, Colorado, and I don't remember the location in the eastern side, and it doesn't look pretty. However, here it feels to me that both parties of the sort of kind of a civil revolt, civil war, will also be against the regime itself. It's interesting because if I think about the history of the United States, then there was a war between the North and the South, but it kind of reunified the country even more. And the word eventually is key here. We're talking about the macro, okay? The micro is looking very, very bad. But the macro is that, there was a civil war and then there was a reunification. And not only there was a reunification, it was the gradual abolishment of slavery. I know that the Thomas Jefferson had slaves, and I know. Eventually, the establishment of granting rights for people supposedly without this less was established through this conflict. We must also remember that Gemini represents children, and it's ruled by Mercury. I don't think there is a point at looking at Mercury transit. We know that natal Mercury for the United States is, according to this, in the 8th house, or at least in Cancer. In previous episodes, an episode about the election, I talked about the difficult situation of women and children in the natal chart of the United States per se. It's just not a chart that creates happy circumstances for women and children. We can see that with both Jupiter and Mercury in a harsh aspect to Saturn. And if we take this ascendant, and this is all happening in the 8th house, which is the house of the things that we want to keep hidden, probably for reasons that I don't need to talk too much. And of course, the Chiron here, if we take it as the houses, it's the 5th house, that tells us that there is a wound around that which is fertile, children, but also gambling, risk-taking, innovation, and so on. But I elaborate in a different video. Take a look here at the in conjunction between Pluto and Jupiter. And that gives me Pluto, Jupiter, Pluto, Mars. Pluto, Mars is the action, is the result. But if I take a look at this conjunction, first take a look at Pluto being in conjunct in Jupiter. And Jupiter is, yes, it's true, it is also children, it's also the guru, but it is also beliefs and worldviews. And the in conjunction with Pluto tells me that the relation between power, empowerment, dealing with experiences of disempowerment, and the ability to make a sense of meaning and purpose around these experiences is not operating well. So before we turn to Mars, okay, although we have a trine here between Pluto and Uranus, and this is something that gives support to whatever is going to happen there. And this is a trine that begins to apply as of even 2024, late 2024, 2025, into the ingress of Uranus into Gemini. And while the trine tells me that the people who revolt, both parties who revolt, have the assistance of Pluto. Okay, that's something they can tap into, is to reassess themes of power, empowerment, and against the places where they felt disempowered. So both parties, and why do I say both? It's not just because of the bipartisan nature of the US regime. It's because of Gemini, and Gemini is usually about deciding between two. Okay, in the case of the United States, up until now it was reintegrating two. Okay, there was a conflict between two, and then the reintegration. We saw that, unfortunately, in the way, slavery or labor rights and so on and so forth, student labor, and so on and so forth, perhaps child labor, and then they outsourced it to China, that outsourced it to, never mind. Anyway, so while both parties that will rebel against each other over whichever belief that we might not be able to predict. I mean, we know the conflicts that exist, but it will no longer be in Capricorn. Still in the Saturn ruled sign, but now it can be more around surveillance, around issues of privacy, around perhaps even I'm not sure about medical technology, or is Neptune here? Yeah, it will still, yeah, okay, it can be around medical technologies that people revolt against, cellular level, and Neptune here, that sextiles. We have the sextile that I talk about, the sextile of a millennium, and that is also medication, numbing things. So perhaps something that is introduced, something that wants to cure, maybe DNA, because it's the code of the essence of the code of whatnot. Um, and then and here, right now we're thinking, oh, vaccines, but this is, in 2026, we are in 2022, almost 2023. It's 3 years from now. So I don't know if it can be a billion other things. So it's going to enter into Aquarius, a billion of other things are going to happen, and it's still sextiles Neptune, so a lot of inventions to do also with the medical field because of Neptune. Neptune is medicine, Uranus is nervous system, Pluto is cells, so cell regeneration to improve the nervous system. I don't know, numbing pain, numbing this, numbing that. I don't know, and that is something that even that is something people, for example, in a place like the United States, against there will be two parties. So one party say we want this treatment, one party say we don't want this treatment, and both of them have and both of them have are informed and have the power. They're both very strong parties. Okay, the fact that Uranus return is going to be trining Pluto and sextiling Neptune um, is telling me that both parts of the argument have merits. This is why I think it's going to be medical argument actually, and not necessarily around fertility. The square to and tell me that they can interfere, that there can be an issue to do with fertility because of Jupiter, insemination, and so on and so forth. But it can be something like completely different. You know, I try not to think in terms of where we are right now and how it will develop, because as Pluto ingresses into medicine are going to be, okay, whether they're going to be put into practice, whether they're going to be conceived around the sextile, um, it's a different thing. So it can be around technology and surveillance, because Neptune is also espionage, surveillance. Pluto is also hidden knowledge. So Pluto, Neptune, surveillance. It can be around medicine, but definitely it will be around something that touches the general public, and both sides will have valid points, but also both sides will be extremist. Okay, in terms of, if we only look at the outer planets and we look at the sextile that we have there, the Uranus, Neptune, and we will have Neptune conjunct Saturn before that. I'm like not going to get into this. If you want to look at Neptune conjunct Saturn, again, S.J. Anderson and Dan Waits. Oh my gosh, if I call him Tom Waits in my head one more time. And then Waits did amazing episodes and around Russia that's more affected by this. And here, Pluto. Tell me that if we just put this thing aside, here, put this thing aside, just the Uranus return in the context of Neptune and Pluto harmonized aspects, new technologies, either surveillance or medicine and surveillance, are going to polarize the people. And both sides will have a point. And this is the kind of difficult, you know, it's not like slavery. There is no point for both sides in slavery. Okay, it's very obvious. One side enslaves other, abuse of power. When it comes to medicine, it begins to be more intricate. Okay, and both, or also around surveillance. For example, I can give you an argument from Europe. In Europe, you can probably hack into the dark web or whatnot and arrest many pedophiles. But the laws that protect privacy in Europe are so strict that you cannot do that. Now, of course, privacy has a value. Okay, the privacy of a person has a value. To know that you, if you write something, if you have your own journal or your thought about I don't know what, privacy is also the nude pictures that some people have in the computer, or the picture of their children that they may have in the computer. Okay, there's reasoning behind that. But also, hey, how many pedophiles are running free or are finding even a refuge in those countries where the legislation protects the privacy of information so much so that even if find someone, it is illegal to expose it. And like I say, you cannot. In many cases, it's going to be illegal to expose illegal activities. Um, so again, with surveillance, we have that perspective. Themes that could be coming around. Um, I think this pretty much is the issue. There can be, of course, the question of war, because if we do take the ascendant as Sagittarius, that would put the seventh house in Gemini, and we know the seventh house mundane is partners and open enemies, so allies and open enemies. And that is another thing that we do want to take into account. And we also will have this conjunction around Aries that you know is affecting Russia. Okay? Here it is in the fifth house for USA, but ruler Mars is in the seventh. Did the USA have a good time being at the Cold War? I don't know. But we understand that this is not for Uranus return for USA is not only ignition of internal conflict, but also conflict with other countries. It's true that Mars is Uranus, so there can be a civil war, and then you thought you're getting out of it, then you have a conflict with another country, and that causes reunification. Okay, you have a joint enemy, which of course, up until now, in the second, like, I think, last century, has been Russia. Okay, USSR/Russia, and we can expect that to be also in 2026. So, but because we already have a war and we already have those internal arguments on how much should USA interfere in the war between Ukraine and Russia, and you know, inspired by the lovely episode about the Neptune Saturn conjunction, its effect on Russia, by Dan Waits and S.J. Anderson, I believe that like that's going to be the case. We will still have this conflict, this ongoing conflict, and that can, especially when you think if about a 3 years long conflict that's ongoing at 2026, that can polarize the public opinion as to what is the level of interest that the United States should have. If somebody thinks splendid isolation, then I bring you back to the natal chart where we have Saturn in the 11th house in Libra, and but it squares a stellium in Cancer and also squaring the US Sun. And so splendid isolation is not something the United States can preserve for a long time. And so while there is good merit and good reasoning to call for isolation, to call for not sending our soldiers to fight and die and so on, so and so, especially amidst recession, economic stuff, social crisis, and so on and so forth. However, we also understand that right a couple of years after this Uranus return, we're about to hit Mars, and this is probably not internal. Okay, probably already external, especially because it's ruling Aries here, and we know that we know that that's Russia. Okay, and that this allows they could any continuation of any splendid isolation ideology that people might want to retrieve. So that can be that the internal conflict around Uranus' return is going to be actually about external affairs, i.e., Russia. And the polarity of should we invest in the front of dealing with Russia, or should we try splendid isolation? Should we solve the internal conflicts in the country before we go outside? And again, both sides have reasoning. Okay, this is a kind of polarity where both sides have a reason the way they do. It's not slavery. It's not the rights of the working people. It is something that is more. And notice I just covered what happens when Uranus ingresses into Gemini and kind of ingresses for good into Gemini after the retrograde. And thanks S.J. Anderson for the for good concept. And now I'm returning to talk about the not only the square we talked about it, so it's going to make the beliefs and the philosophies of both parties very much extremist, and they're going to act on these beliefs. Not only that, not just the beliefs and the actions where on what houses, okay? 9th and 10th. So we are talking about the regime. We're talking about the government. And the government itself is going to be fundamentalistic. It's going to be extremist. However, government and the people of the government of both sides will find it a bit difficult, or at least the regime will find it a bit difficult to deal with the sense of disempowerment that comes. And here Pluto in the 3rd house, mundane. Again, if you take that to be the 4th house, then you can see, you know, civil, like the regime being overthrown or disempowered by the people. If you take the ascendant to be the 1st house to be Sagittarius, it can be that we will see the revolting using transportation, revolting in the chain of command, chain of supply. Will that be militant? I don't think so, with that house being in Aquarius, but definitely certain technologies. There can be also hacking that affects the public transportation. That is perhaps you have more knowledge on mundane. No, I'm learning together here, so you can give me your input. But all in all, there is a challenge of the power, not of the people so much, but of the people in power, the regime, coming from, well, Pluto in Aquarius is the people, the masses, but here it's not the 4th house. If it is the 4th house, so it's classic, okay, the people challenge the regime. It can be a class thing, okay, classes, clash of the classes. Um, but either way, those people in power that will experience that sense of disempowerment coming not only from the revolution but from whatever happens here in Pluto, with Pluto in Aquarius, they will not find easy to make meaning of it. They will not find it easy to make meaning and purpose of it. Um, Pluto overthrows not a person here necessarily. I mean, yes, you cannot ignore that these things happen around the ascendant of Donald Trump. Donald Trump be a part of the players in 2026? Uh, I don't know. Okay? I don't know. Um, so it is not necessarily a person that is being overthrown here, but a set of beliefs, something that shakes the foundations upon which the country has been established upon, because this is Pluto leaving the Pluto return, and kind of even a tight orb with the Pluto return, ingressing into Aquarius for good now. But we're still at the aftermath of something, and it can be that through technology, the regime, the fundamentals upon which the regime is. I've been hearing calls to decentralize democratic regime. So it's not to go back to tyranny, but to go forward to an even more decentralized structure of regime. There's not anarchy. Okay, there might be anarchistic calls, but it's not anarchy. Okay, but definitely it's a structure that is giving more space and more and current structure. So that in itself can be something that, if the foundation of the United States was centered around also the type of small government. Okay, what is the Second Amendment? It's not there for mass shootings. It is there so that if somebody comes to evacuate you because you couldn't pay for your land, you couldn't pay property tax, but you nourish the land, you still are entitled to the fruits of the land. That's capitalism. Capitalism is not about great corporation and monopoly. Monopoly is not capitalism, it's anti-capitalism. Okay, even when we critique a certain worldview, we have to understand the worldview that we critique. Capitalism is nothing to do with the corporate world. It's nothing to do with monopoly. It's nothing to do with that. No. The government is supposed to act against that. And when the government is not doing the right thing, then the Second Amendment is basically the reinvocation of the theory of John Locke around the mandatory act of revolting against the regime that does not protect the people. And this is the social contract that the people have between themselves. Okay, that's not me. That's the history of the philosophy that was created, that has created the country. But now, with the reinstillment of technology, something, and this tells me that something is. Oh, Saturn signifies rulers, and Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. I'm not sure that this will be a top-down thing. It can be a bottom-up thing here. It can be a bottom-up thing. Something around technology changes the way we do something, and it might, it can't be around coins, because we have to have an economy that's so safe to do that, or maybe we don't. But there's just something, a structure, a technology that may even belong to the people, or be borrowed from, I don't know, from Russia, or you never know. Okay, something that is bought. The way I see it, I could be wrong, of course, because again, it is Saturn ruled. Pluto is still Saturn ruled. And Saturn is also the rulership and the basically the plutocracy. Uh, but Saturn as the ruler of Aquarius, I don't know. Um, Attempts to regulate. I don't know. Anyway, and so it seems like that the people in charge, the people that are supposed to be the people that are supposed to play the role of the government, are dumbfounded by this. I haven't looked into the previous Uranus returns. I don't know what was there, but this is something that it is not shaking, for example, about slavery, shake the foundations, but it didn't shake the foundations. It was just reenacting what the Constitution is about. Talking about feminism or rights of the employees, it doesn't, I'm sorry, but the rights of employees is basically meaning that if you make something with your hands and you are responsible for the development of this product firsthand, hands-on, then you are entitled to the fruits of your labor. Newsflash, the context in which capitalism was coming to life was feudalism, and that was around, so the thing that you were making were fruits, natural agriculture, and in an industrial revolution, and that the people wearing blue there, they realized, okay, now we're not planting the seeds, now we are doing something in a factory, but it's the concept is still the same. That's capitalism. We have yet exited capitalism. So that is something we need to keep in mind. So even the unionization of labor that was considered perhaps shaking the capitalist foundations of the bogus. It's in alignment with the Constitution. Same thingy, same. Okay, so women are people, and women are entitled to make decisions about their body as they are owning their body, because capitalism, okay, private property. Previously, women were considered so much a part of the man in terms of legislation that they were not even the property of the man. They were just like a symbiotic part of the man, and therefore there was nobody could think that a woman could owe something because she was a part of, not a property of the man, a part of the man. To be a property, you need to be external, okay? In more ancient times, yes, women were listed as properties. So like the right triangles for women, they were a part of the property. The Piscean age was that symbiosis, and indeed in legislation, women were considered a symbiotic part of the man, and therefore they could not be the property of the man, but they could also not own property, because it's like saying that your right hand owns this house and your left hand owns that house. I mean, for sure you can find a tax way to do that, but and then we had the notion that, hey, women are individuals and they are entitled to own property. So none of that really challenged the foundations on which the United States was founded. But as we move to Pluto in Aquarius, and again, we had Pluto in Aquarius, we had an industrial revolution before. United States had a Pluto in Aquarius. So it's not the first time Pluto is going to be in Aquarius. But the context of that, that and Neptune and Uranus, and they in conjunct to Jupiter, okay? Mars is action, but Jupiter tells me that the ability to make sense of what's going on there. Albeit that, no, it's not even a trine. It's a yod. It's between Neptune and Jupiter. So again, two inconjuncts, one from the Aquarius side and the other one from the Aries side of outer planets to this Jupiter. This Jupiter is not having an easy time. To make sense of it, it's a philosophical crisis. Up until now, we could return to John Locke, we could progress to pragmatism, we could derive from faith and philosophy, from the combination of the merit of logic from Peirce and the merit of the implication of having a belief, and so to enjoy also the benefits of having a belief. We could say in God we trust, and sort of a kind of a mean it. So maybe God is now God's, okay, but eventually, or maybe God is science, but hey, in general, the many fractures that were and still are were able to be contained. It doesn't mean that everything was perfect. It just means that the US survived in one piece. But now, it will be very challenging to make sense, to make philosophical sense of what Neptune brings in Aries. And you know what? This can even be the year of a dissolution of conflict between the United States and Russia. And now, let's say, you lost your best enemy. What are you going to do now? Whom are you going to fight? Whom are you going to argue? What are you going to do? That can also be something that's a philosophical crisis. And Neptune is around loss. Neptune, and it doesn't mean that Russia will be lost, okay? It can simply mean that, what if there is an actual, an actual peace agreement, an actual no Cold War? What does it mean? Okay, what now? Okay, there have been a tremendous allocation of resources, not only material but also philosophical, that was invested. We reached the moon. Who reached the moon first, the Russian dog or Louis Armstrong, or I don't know. We don't know, but the scientific advancements ever since the Cold War have been ongoing. The justification for surveillance had been ongoing. It's very difficult to justify surveillance when you don't have enemies spying on you, or when you don't have significant enemies spying on you. Okay? Well, Julian Assange, come on. It's not enemy of the state. And on the other hand, that something that Pluto does here in Aquarius is shaking up, not the foundations of the Constitution so much as the foundation of the philosophical principles upon which that Constitution was founded in the first place. So if Pluto return was not enough to shake us, then that in conjunct with Jupiter, Jupiter in conjunct in Neptune, while Uranus is fiercely approaching is Uranus return, and this ingress is absolutely already the scope of Uranus return. It's not one moment that things happen. Um, it tells me that we need to look at philosophy, we need to look at religion, we need to look at belief, um, and understand that that is that is the essence of what is. This is not something to be taken lightly, and it is not, with, for example, the rights of black people. Black people are also people. Yeah, obviously. LGBTQ people are also people. Duh. Women are also people. Okay. The social contract that John Locke conceived might not be a correct paradigm for 2026. That's what we're talking about here. and the structure of democracy can no longer accommodate for the advancements of humanity that requires for an easier technological solution that will create more equity and allow the masses to be involved politically. The masses to be involved politically, Pluto and Aquarius, is called for. We don't elect our judges, but do we have representation? Do we have queer judges? Do we have uh, women judges? Do you have black judges? Do you have disabled people with disability judges? Do you have neurodivergent people at the Supreme Court? Do we have representation? But I'm still speaking in democracy terms. Okay? There's a calling for further decentralization of the regime, but it is not even on the practical structural level. It is way deeper. And to make sense of, or to conceive what is the new, or to even make sense of it philosophically, it seems like, well, it's anti-democracy. Okay, but we're not going backwards, we're going forwards. And we're going forwards towards decentralization of something. Aquarius is decentralization. Okay? It's not globalization, it's decentralizing something. We go from Capricorn hierarchy to a structure outside the structure with less hierarchy. Okay? So decentralizing the coins, decentralizing economy, decentralizing social media, decentralizing the regime, decentralizing the Supreme Court. Wait, how do you decentralize the Supreme Court? Wait, what? Wait, what? The whole thing that unified us was the Constitution. What, are you going to decentralize the Constitution? And that's a big deal. And this is not, because Pluto and Uranus are in trine, it is not the abuse of power. It's not about facing the abuse of power. It's harmonizing with the nature of power to create a revolutionary solution, an innovative solution on the grand scale for the people. A civil solution. The potential is great. We cannot ignore that Mars is sitting pretty there, and so Mars Pluto hard aspects, yes, they are not lovely. Mars is action, aggression. Pluto is themes of power, overpowering, or experiences of disempowerment. And that is something that, unfortunately, because it's a hard aspect, is very likely to play a part in the unfolding of future, the history of the future years. Um, uh, if Donald Trump will be at this time a part of the US politics, then he will be very much involved. I don't know how, but Jupiter will cross his ascendant, Mars will cross his ascendant. Mars is the more challenging planet to his chart. So this is something that if he will be a part of the US politics, whether from within the structure or outside of the structure, um, he might be a part of the people that will find it very difficult to make sense of things, but to make sense of things philosophically. So you know the song Losing My Religion? A lot of people will have this experience, but those will be the people on top. There can be a sense of ideology devoid of philosophy. This is essentially the problem that L'Ombre Belle was discussing, and Albert Camus was discussing in L'Ombre Belle. It was basically the problem of revolution full of ideology but devoid of philosophy. Okay, and basically the revolution of the youngsters. And here, with the chart of the US, Uranus is in Mercury, so it's the sign of young people, of children, of youth, basically. And the problem of youth revolution is that these are young people. They have the spirit to revolt, the spirit to evolve. They have the spirit to revolt as well, but they do not have the Saturnian life experience. So it's like they know something needs to be changed, but they do not yet have the philosophy of what the desired outcome is. Okay, and so this will definitely play a part, because the philosophy is Jupiter and ideology is Saturn. And you would think, oh, ideology must have foundations in philosophy. Sometimes, but part of the great mass of a revolution is a drive to change something, and this can be ideology in itself. We need to change this. This can no longer be the situation. And that in itself is ideology. But the philosophy of what are we building on might not be so conscious, might not be so evident, because the rebels are still young. And we see here the Jupiter in the chart of the United States, although it is exalted in Cancer and we have fascinating philosophy. One major part of pragmatism is the humanistic part of American philosophy. American philosophers gave us, wonderful. And pragmatism is the basis of a lot of methods of healing, both emotionally, psychologically, and holistically. The understanding that it is good to believe, it's good to understand. If I believe in something, for example, what do I think about God? Do I think that God is kind to me? Then if I think that God is kind to me, then I'm not afraid, and then I can be more relaxed, and I can be healthier. But if I over-exaggerate on that, then, and here we have the square to Saturn, because sometimes we do need that contraction. We do need to have to be a bit, God-fearing, or to understand consequences and understand that there may be consequences, and so we want to make sure that in our expansions we don't step on the toes of, we don't violate human rights. So in the natal chart of the United States, Saturn here is in a hard aspect to Jupiter, and so philosophy has a conflict with the ability to do a reality check. It can give a very positive vibe. Okay, I don't want to say positive philosophy, something completely different, but it can give a vibe of, think positively, expand, allow room to grow, dream big, and not just in the American dream, but just, the psychological benefit of faith. Uh, but there can be certain reality checks, certain people that instead of being benefited from that philosophical expansion find themselves, or the notion that the power of the human being, the power of the individual to be a self-made rich person, and you find out sometimes that you work in 2, 3, 4 jobs and you still can't be a self-made paying my bills person. And not because something is wrong with your decision, but you will find it very difficult to get the support of the people or the compassion of the people, and to not have them try to uh, make you think like it's something bad with your choice. It's very difficult to prove it when the dream does not work out for you. So it's very difficult to accept. But this is a square. Here in the transits we have an inconjunct between the experience of being disempowered in Pluto and the philosophy. And inconjuncts are especially difficult to settle, because with the opposition you need to hold a contradict, you need to hold a paradox. It's Zen thinking. The square is ongoing tension, that you constantly grow, you constantly evolve. The inconjunct, you don't know exactly which way to grow even. Think about a plant that that is found in a place where it moves around and it doesn't even have this one place where it stays, and it can adjust itself to the direction of the sun, so it doesn't know where to grow. Should I grow leaves? Should I grow leaves here? Should I grow leaves there? Should I invest in a flower? You don't know what to do. Okay, that's the transit that we have here now, because Mars is transiting, and Mars is also ruling the nation that is affected here, the Russia. There can be external conflict where United States does not know what to do in terms of also external politics. And the reaction, the philosophical reaction, before we even get to Mars, the philosophical reaction to Uranus is going to be very extreme. We may find that the new theories or the adaptation to theories or the kind of theories that people will try to lean on, it's Jupiter in the sign that is ruled by the sun. People might try to look for a strong leader, or the leaders might think of themselves as kings or that as mediators, as something that is not compatible with the direction that Pluto is heading here in Aquarius. It's not compatible at all. And not only because of the conjunction with Mars, they will try to act it out. And both sides of the people that were fighting are not going to have it. And we have Pluto here pretty much in alignment with Uranus. So the people who rebel, both sides, are going to be very much empowered versus the regime. And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because there can be a passage of time during this conjunction where someone might believe that this is a good time, people will look for a strong leader, and they are in for some unpleasant, surprise, shock, drama, I don't know. but all in all, things are not going to look the same. And and it is too early to say that the structure of the regime will change. But definitely, the people in power will have philosophical crisis, and definitely the ideology of the revolution will not be compatible to the philosophy um, uh, that is trying to disindoctrinated or tries to, the attempt to indoctrinate a new philosophy will not be accepted by the people. And for how long will it last? I don't know. I'm not going to try to predict the future. I think that there is place for, especially as Pluto ingresses into Aquarius, there's place for the power of the people. There is place to think now about what are the philosophical foundations of decentralized everything. Okay, and how do we make those philosophical foundations compatible with both the reality check of Saturn and the desire to expand and grow of Jupiter, of Neptune even? Um, I do think that it will be a time around Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, um, when Jupiter is going to conjunct with Uranus. There will definitely be new philosophies around labor, around coins, around agriculture, that will begin to form, revolutionizing not only philosophy but also science. So there are plenty of things to tap into. Okay, we see it's not just hard aspects here. We also see harmonizing aspects. We also see a trine here between two big planets, big outer planets, the one that can allow us to tap into a sense of empowerment, not overpowering and not being disempowered, but empowered, and the other one that can give us a sense of eureka, a sudden solution, an innovative new point of view. And the history to that is Saturn is going to conjunct Neptune, so loss of old structures and something coming out of it, something new, because Aries is something new. And the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, which of course is going to be very interesting for this is where philosophy and ideology intertwine. I refer to that as the big O of sapiosexual people. It definitely is. It definitely is. So there are going to be very interesting things. There are going to be very interesting good things. There are going to be very interesting far-fetched things. But this already will be a Jupiter that has a new idea. Unfortunately, here in the chart of the United States, the way he meets this particular ingress of Uranus is going from Leo to Virgo and being around the 10th house and conjuncting Mars. So I don't expect them to it's not the Jupiter, it's not the continuation of the Jupiter conjunct Taurus per se, because we're talking about the chart of a country here. And so there is local context and it's not being translated correctly, and boy will it not be easy for the leaders who do not translate Jupiter Uranus cycle. Okay? Pluto is in Aquarius. It is not in the hands of a person. Now, one word about China. Why do I say China? Because China is a very, very, very big federation, whatnot, country. I like um, Democratic Republic of China. So a very big, like it's huge, and the population, they have problems where they try to enforce people not to have children because they don't have how to take care of them, and so many people. Um, and so the structure of the Democratic Party, okay, it is the party in charge, the Democratic Republic of China. Then you have the party, the DPRK, has changed to such a structure that no one person can be in power over the entire party. So you cannot have like a Stalin there or Mao, okay, in the fall of Mao. Um, so that is another form of decentralization that they experienced, going from one person doing the cultural revolutions and being unstoppable around the communistic party. The DPRK changed the structure of the party to a structure that there is no one person that can take over the entire structure. Okay? This is a form of decentralization of regime. But here we're talking about a Pluto in the sign of the people. It is 20 years. Technology is going to support. So I hear a lot of, they're going to control, they're going to surveil, they are going to this, they are going to that, hidden powers, the hidden hierarchies in Aquarius. And I think it's true. I think we should not ignore that, but we should also not ignore the genuine power of the people to generate innovative structures of governance, to generate communities where you have enough place for the individual expression and a sensible structure that people, there's a good balance of order and chaos, that people feel that everybody has a place to be. And that place is expansive. Okay? I think that what we are now seeing is when Pluto is still in Aquarius, still in Capricorn, then people try to accommodate for that bottom-up need communally, but also more individually with communities, to have what is neurodivergence, LGBTQ. Okay, those are the authentic, unique qualities of every person, every individual within society. This is typically Aquarius. This is typically Aquarius age. And what we are now seeing is the plutocrats of the Pluto Capricorn era attempt to cope with the need of the people to have something that is completely different from what they have to offer. So I'm not, saying that Pluto in Aquarius will not have its difficulties. I am saying that we do tap here into something that um, uh, that will yield more accessibility of the the masses to power. And because it is Aquarius, the desire for knowledge, the desire for a scientific common language, the Also in Aquarius, Aquarius is very opinionated and it's fixed. And some would say it's tyrannical, but Aquarius, they would be fixed about an opinion, but if you think completely differently, they talk to you as any Aries planet would be to discuss with you if you are thinking differently, unless it's accompanied by Pluto. And of course, Pluto can bring an attempt intellectually and so on and so forth. So we don't exactly know how it will be, but we also know that the wisdom for Pluto, that this is an air sign, so the best way to control is to completely not surrender, although we do have the sextile with Neptune. And again, I'm going to Pluto Aquarius, um, is to have transparency. That's the journey of Pluto, if you have transparency with yourself, you go from experience of feeling disempowered into feeling empowered without needing to have power over others, because you're a magnet to authenticity. But this will be the journey of Pluto in every place, and here it's the place of air. So it's the journey to understanding that transparency is actually um, something that allows us to be authentic and to use transparency for authenticity, because everything will leak. Pluto in an air sign, you know, don't expect, like, they really don't expect regulation to work there, and all countries will have to deal with that to some extent. USA will need to deal with that, and actually be empowered with the beginning of Pluto in Aquarius. So I I can't say I have all the facts. We do look at the chart. We see the manifesting aspects. We see the hard aspects. Of course, Mars in conjunct Pluto is problematic. Of course, Mars in conjunct Neptune is problematic. Um, you say it's a transient effect. Mm, with it's an effect. It's a transit that activates the triangle of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and in a harsh way, not in an easy way. Square Uranus in conjunct Neptune in conjunct Pluto. Of course, something's going to happen there, and this is, the date for this is by the end of November 2026. Around this time, I do expect to be events. I don't know what events, if there be internal, international, both. I do expect to be events. I'm not, I'm not a grand believer in the bearer of, horrid news, because I don't know. Um, but we see that this is not easy. On the other hand, we also see that it's not like there's nothing to resort to reinstall a new sense of genuine empowerment within this transit and within this crisis. Okay, we're actually downloading a timeline of tremendous advancement, spiritual, technological, internal, political, you know, I don't like. I'm at loss for words for the set of potentials that we have here with the harmonious aspects between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Um, but that that great light needs to be absorbed and needs to be processed, and the blocks to things to come need to be removed, and that those processes might be difficult. To what extent, how difficult, I don't know. Um, So this is what I have to say about this. Yes, Mars and Jupiter will cross the midheaven. I think they will no longer be conjunct. And then the Neptune opposes. Okay, the Saturn Neptune conjunction opposes the midheaven. We have a Neptune. We are having a Neptune opposition. Actually, right now we're having a Neptune opposition in the chart of the United States. So we're so busy, with this, that, and that, and then we're having a Neptune opposition in the chart of the United States. And we do see dissolution of boundaries around the regime. So I'm totally getting Virgo here as the 10th house vibes. We do see a dissolution of boundaries. We did have the issue with with Trump there, that they invaded, the FBI invaded Trump's house, and some people will say, well, blah 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 blah, IRS, pay your taxes, but then this is also a structural issue, and then of course we will have the conjunction between Neptune and Saturn. As Neptune leaves its opposition, and Neptune also opposes, it will apply to reapply to oppose the midheaven of the United States. So definitely, if I think about the last year and a half, even more, the United States has gone through crisis in its both regime and reputations. And because Neptune is conjuncting the midheaven, the reputation of I told this, I had when I was in academia, I was a part of Model UN, as many students are, and it was something that we all knew. Everybody that has to say something about the United States, then a country like, if somebody else was Russia that day, then they could say, well, the number one surveillance in the world is not the Mossad and is not Russia, it is actually the United States. And when I look at this chart, it's like, yes, of course, Neptune. So surveillance, espionage, midheaven, or the illusion of espionage. Okay, it can be that, like the Israeli textile factory. Neptune, you never know. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is true that United States is surveilling the top surveillance of the world, but it can have a reputation of being so. Okay, or alternatively, it can be true because of the nature of Neptune. And so all in all, we have Neptune return. It has definitely brought US to the news. We definitely, in recent months, we had the story with Julian Assange. The United States wants to jail him for 175 years for doing journalism. And there is no legal way to expose illegal activity of regimes. And this is true to any country. There's nothing unusual around that. If you take a look at WikiLeaks, everything is there of many countries. It's still on, and fortunately and hopefully will continue to be so, because that's what journalism is supposed to do. And so if we had also the story with Jonathan Pollard, and that was a different story. He was not a journalist. He was indeed like the story there that he was a spy for a country. Okay, so it's not that he was a journalist. It was leaking things, that he was a spy for a country. And then it was very difficult. And even though there were great relations between the United States and Israel along the years, it was very difficult to release Pollard, and that happened only later. So the country that is reputed to be the top surveillant is having very difficult time with accepting the fact that there are other countries that can surveil it. This is right on the midheaven, and we saw that right around of the Neptune opposition, that is also a Neptune opposition midheaven, triggering the natal conjunction of Neptune. We had first the case for the invasion of one of the leaders into the one of the house, that is Donald Trump, 4 documents. The FBI did that. Okay, and then just a couple of months, I think before or after that, then the case with Assange, that they said, no, we want to. By the way, Donald Trump was supporting in accusing Assange in espionage. And so was Hillary Clinton, as far as I understood. So this is not the left party. And that is something that, plays into the cycle of 2026, because we see that here it's not this party or that party, but the entire, like the people's against something that both parties could even hold as renaissance of the midheaven around surveillance. It can be around medical issues as well, and I said that. And so we do have, a lot of disputes around medical issues. We had that around COVID. We had it globally, but with Neptune opposing Neptune, we also had that in the United States. And we had, with Uranus in the 6th house of the United States, definitely the Great Resignation. We cannot ignore this event. So, any tomorrow with Neptune midheaven. One of the things that the United States is known for is actually its constitution. It's made the constitution, so it's a document, a Mercury thing, right? And then Neptune there, and then So again, the discussions around weapon, not weapon, I don't know. Pluto returned. We've seen gas prices rising up. We've seen inflation, also, along with Uranus, and then we had the Saturn-Uranus. So I think that's about that. Well, themes of liberation. It's interesting because I'm trying to see themes of liberation. Well, we have, nightly Uranus and Saturn trine each other. So it is a structure that is in harmony with a value of liberation or revolution. So it was a country that was founded as liberating itself from colonial regime, British colonialism, basically. And they had the Pluto-Neptune trine. Oh, wow. That was some good election. That was some good election. With the moon here, the moon in Aquarius, sort of like mitigating the square between Venus and Jupiter and Saturn. Supposedly. I don't think it can. I don't know if it's strong enough. But then Mars squares Neptune, and Mars in the 7th house, Mars in Gemini. Because of that Mars square Neptune internally, then I'm trying to see the invasion, the risk of invasion, but we had, of course, quite a strong response, and the response, as we all remember, was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. that Pluto and way, at the time when they dropped the Manhattan Project, and at the time when they actually dropped the bombs, a lot of people were praising that. It was considered to be the right thing to do at that time. Like I said, Jupiter is not in a happy aspect, even though it is exalted. But at that time, it seemed like the right thing to do. So with United States went from splendid isolation, Saturn, to being intensely involved in conflict. We do have the trine here in Italy between Mars and Saturn. So this is definitely a country that can respond, that can react, that can defend itself. And even though Mars is the more diplomatic planet, it is still in good relation, but in bad relation with Neptune, although in good relations with the Moon. Yeah. Definitely the belief that you can be, that you can take care of yourself with your own actions and as an individual. Okay, Moon in Aquarius, an individual, the power of the people, or emotionally like relying on both the masses and the ability of each individual within the masses to reach a different position. I don't know if a different position of power, but to advance themselves, okay, Mars, to act in favor of themselves. Psychologically. And by the way, the United States is one of the capitals of psychology, of modern psychology. So, yeah. Interesting. As you can see, I didn't go too much into like history research. I just tried to look at the chart and see what I see from there, and try to look well and not just see disasters, but also see potentials. And so and that is for the ingress of, more like the for good ingress of Uranus into Gemini for the United States. At the time of Jupiter conjuncting Mars, following Saturn conjuncting Neptune. So, earlier that year. So thank you for watching. I have challenged myself. Now I can do all these videos that I wanted to look, but I didn't know if I want to do something about the Uranus return for USA. I did it. And now I'm free to watch content about my next video. So thank you. Thank you for watching. And